This is You the People. Each week, we three Canadians have talked about you, the people, your politics, your political system, your inaugurations, and yes, your now fully healed country. And with me, as always, Corey Hogan, Stephen Carter. Guys, what is going on? America. It is complete. The tapestry is weaved. It is perfect again. Their race problems, thing of the past. Their unity problems, a thing of the past. America no longer divided. How are you guys doing?
Income disparity, all fixed. Everything's going our way right now. I mean, it's just pretty much a perfect utopia. So I couldn't be happier. Everything's back to normal. Brady's still in the playoffs. Everything's going our way.
This was a more sarcastic start than I wanted, actually, now that I think about it. Corey, any commentary from your perspective now that Joe Biden has won the election, but Bernie Sanders has won the alt-right war? Just by sitting on a chair, he has won more than just an election.
No, he's not just a politician. He's now a legend. He's been placed everywhere in every situation. And really, when you kind of think about the presidency, that's 4 years. But being an internet meme, I think that's forever, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Forever.
Some of the good ones. I think Grumpy Cat did 2 terms. Grumpy Cat did 2 terms at least.
Yeah, but then he died, right?
Yeah,
so that's not a good
true.
thing.
I mean,
well, that's going to happen to Bernie Sanders too.
It's
So.
true. Yeah, I mean, doing 2 terms and dying. The kid with the fist, I think that's been going on like 2.5 terms now.
You're thinking like the little kid, yeah?
The little kid with the fist. I think he's 28 now. I think he's 28. So I mean, yeah, Corey's right. Like the term of a meme, it just once again like lasts way longer than a presidency. Carter, any comments on our friend Bernie Sanders? Because we will discuss him in abstractions, but I want to get your comments up front because I feel like that is a real winner.
Listen, I've laughed at the memes. It's made me happy. And really, this is the first time Bernie Sanders made me happy. So that's all I can ever ask for. Just one moment of happiness.
Okay, well, there you go. Let's move it on to our headlines. Guys, we've got headlines from not just the inauguration, but of course, as you remember, since the last time we recorded, Trump was still president for a bit. So let us start off with this headline from Rolling Stone. Trump called in pillow salesmen to discuss the possibility of instituting martial law. I'm going to miss these headlines because these are words that we've all heard before. Trump, pillow salesman, martial law. But together, I don't think we've ever seen them together.
I mean, in the Trump administration, it's quite possible we did see them together. But, yeah...
So you guys remember this story? For some context.
Oh yeah, I do. And the guy,
okay.
So the My Pillow guy was photographed leaving the White House with his notes clearly visible with the words martial law on it, and the context was pretty clear about what he was planning on too. And my favorite part of the story is that despite being photographed with these words in his hands, he then went on to deny that there was anything about martial law in his notes. Like, he was caught as red-handed can be. And I think it's the perfect encapsulation of the Trump presidency and that certain brand of republicanism. Lie, break all the rules, lie some more, total disregard for democratic norms, and just a denial of the bald facts that are right in front of you. All while getting a great night's sleep on My Pillow, an excellent pillow available at now fewer retailers all across the United States.
Significantly fewer retailers. I don't know anything about this pillow, by the way. I don't know if we get the My Pillow here in Canada. We've got Sleep Country. But listen, this guy said he met Trump first through divine appointment. Which, by the way, incredible. And then he's obsessed with his personal brand. He does like late night commercials for these pillows. Carter, you've run political campaigns, you've run political offices, and I'm sure you've met with folks who've wanted to bring in their friends who've got conspiracy theories for 5-minute meetings. So probably not all that dissimilar to some of the political experience you've had, I imagine.
No, but my experience was with the spray-on hair guy, so it was totally different, right? Because the spray-on hair was a legitimate product. I think that what's fascinating about this is that you're reaching the bottom of the barrel, right? You've run out of all your other advisors. You can't even count on your son-in-law anymore, so you call in the My Pillow CEO, and that's who you're going to for your advice. Just remember that every time you're out there, folks, and you're casting around for advice. If you're going to the very bottom of the people that you know, and they're the last people that can give you advice that you agree with, maybe you're not doing so well. So he didn't do so well, and I mean, now the My Pillow guy is complaining that he's losing sales and is being canceled. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. It's called consequence. So, I'm really pleased that we've seen, a little bit of consequence going around the Trumpers.
Let's talk about consequence, because let's move up the timeline a bit and now to this Vanity Fair headline. Tiger King Joe Exotic books limousine ahead of expected pardon from Donald Trump. First of all, who knew you could book a limousine from prison? Secondly, he didn't get pardoned. Corey.
Well, look, he believed strongly in the power of positive thinking. So one of two things happened here. Both are great. One of them is that Joe Exotic and or his lawyer basically just fabricated that Donald Trump was contemplating a pardon. I think perhaps to almost will it into existence. Like if people thought it, maybe they'd say that's great. Maybe Donald Trump will do it. And that's pretty amazing and so on brand for Joe Exotic. I don't know if you watched Tiger King, Zain, but
I did.
But yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's the perfect encapsulation of his personality. Or, and I don't even know which one's better, or Donald Trump was actually considering pardoning Joe Exotic at one point, which is funnier. I don't even know.
I think that the latter is funnier. I think that Donald Trump thinking, you know what? I need to pardon this guy because he's got the kind of fame that I want. That is true. That is the better story, than Tiger King just kind of making up his own solution, right? Like his own pardon, which I'm sure is actually what happened. I don't think this, Trump doesn't, just hand out pardons to every reality television show host.
No, I mean, Joe Exotic never ran his campaign.
Exactly.
This is absolutely true. I mean, amongst the cronies that he had. I mean, one could argue that not pardoning Joe Exotic was the first piece of strategery we saw from Trump, so as to not, have a competitor enter the field for the next time he wants to run for president. So, I mean, it is.
That's true.
It's smart strategy.
It's very savvy.
It is someone with a bigger brand, perhaps a more sympathetic brand. So here we go. It's I'd say the first piece of strategy on the last day of the Trump presidency. Okay, let's move it on a bit to now Inauguration Day, and I've got so many headlines I want to touch upon, but let me start with this one from the BBC. Biden inauguration leaves QAnon believers in disarray. Amazing screen caps from QAnon message boards, including several saying that they've lost all hope. They can't believe this is happening. Others latching on to other theories, saying that this is actually part of the grand plan. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we win in the long term. Absolutely amazing. Carter, I'm going to go to you first on this.
Well, I loved watching it. Like, first of all, it's, there's 17 flags. It's happening, right? And then it didn't happen. And now they're like, maybe this wasn't true the whole time. Yeah, maybe you've been taken in, but most of them will continue to follow this. And it's a pretty spectacular, situation for them. It makes me happy to watch QAnon supporters suffer.
Corey.
Well, it's an amazing, I mean, could there be stronger evidence that this is fake? I mean, let's just put aside the fact that the entire story on its face is insane, right? Like that, there's this secret cabal of Satanist pedophiles who rule the world, and Donald Trump has been running some sort of clandestine campaign to bring them to light and arrest them and have them executed. And this was all going to culminate on Inauguration Day for great effect, apparently just as Biden's about to take the oath of office. I mean, I guess if you've gone as far as believing that, you can believe the next step, which is that the plan continues even after Trump is out of office. But I mean, it's some pretty intensely weird shit, and many people have commented, and this is not a new observation, it's more like a religion than it is like a political philosophy. There's not that many people give a lot of constructive thought to their political philosophies either these days, but the notion that you had some people then retconning, like people who thought like Joe Biden was the villain, he was like the heavy brought in the final season that you're all supposed to boo and hiss at. He's the wrestling heel who says your city sucks when he goes to visit your city to these QAnon people. And then all of a sudden, as of 12:01 p.m. Eastern time yesterday, they're saying like, the more I think about it, maybe Joe Biden is actually on our side and he's working with Trump to take down the secret pedophile Satanist cabal. I mean, what do you say? How do you help these people? And I think they need help. Like, you know, a lot of them are lost now. And the big risk, to get serious for a minute, is now that the QAnon thing's not worked out for them, they're just going to get into other bad shit, you know, Nazism, you know, like these militia groups that are out there giving angry, lost people a purpose. You know, it's very troubling. But let's just take it light again. It's fucking funny to watch them go through these existential crises between 11:55 a.m. and 11:59 a.m. Really fucking funny.
Oh, it was incredible. But, you know, to your point, Corey, the danger seems real. There are QAnon candidates in Congress, including
they're not candidates anymore.
No, that's right. They were candidates, and now they're congressmen. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, quite literally a couple hours before we record this podcast, comes out that she's filing articles of impeachment against Joe Biden as a hat tip to the QAnon cabal. As a sign that the work continues from the inside, that she's there for them. It's quite something. It's quite alarming in many ways, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenge, though. You've got you know, people want to believe certain things, right? And when you stop producing Marvel movies at a clip of 3 a year, this is where people go. So.
That's true.
You know, obviously what we need is more Harlequin romances, Jack Ryan novels, and a few Marvel movies so these people can have something to do, because it's turned into a gong show. And as long as it kind of continues, you know, the democracy remains at risk. I mean, there's long been conspiracy theorists. There has not been conspiracy theorists in power the way Marjorie Taylor Greene has. And my God, the impeachment notification, like, what the fuck? It's not going to go anywhere. But is this the tit for tat that we're going to expect from the big minds of the Republican Party? I mean, in Canada, she'd have been out. She'd have been Derek Sloan. I mean, that's what happens in Canada. You get thrown out when you speak crazy talk, you know, after, you know, months, sometimes years. The party leader finally grows tired of you. There's no such recourse in the United States. So she's going to be there I think she's going to be there for a while. And I'm not just predicting that, hoping that my prediction, as always, is wrong.
It will be. But thank you, Carter, for the well wishes to democracy. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's move it on to our next headline from Fox News. Yes, it is from Fox News, but the headline is excellent. Sometimes they make good headlines. President Biden has button used to order Diet Coke removed from Oval Office resolute death.
I saw
oh my goodness!
That. Oh
Once again, words that we know, but words that have been put together. Amazing. So Donald Trump seemed to have, speaking of religions, Corey, that you mentioned, Donald Trump prayed at the Church of Diet Coke, not so much so that he had a button on his desk that would have a butler come into the Oval Office bringing him a Diet Coke. Joe Biden, for some reason whatsoever, has gotten rid of it. I'm really curious to see what he replaces it with. But over to you first.
Yeah, and if you've seen this button, it's like in this wooden box.
It is
so fucking stately. It's like the president's version of a fancy red button to press.
Yeah, it's not the Staples button, if that's what you're imagining.
Oh, no. If you're imagining like a big, that was easy, you were wrong. It's like something with like the seal of the president engraved into it and a little red button that's, you know, that looks very serious just right there. And apparently a man comes out of a wall with a Diet Coke for you when you press it. I mean, like, that sounds like a dream that I would have had as an 8-year-old, where it's like, Corey Hogan, you can be president of the United States. What do you think that's like? Well, I assume there's a button where if I press it, a man comes out of a wall and gives me a soft drink. That sounds fucking cool. And, you know, in some sense, I sort of almost want to give Trump style points on that, because not many people would think to kind of live that 8-year-old dream when they get that office. But I'll tell you something. If I somehow found myself president of the United States, I'm bringing that button back.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
Carter, you know, you've led a political office. What sort of funky buttons did those offices have?
Well, I had one that if I pressed it, Corey would automatically appear and tell me how right I was. It was pretty spectacular. No, this is a totally weird button, and no one else has ever had this type of a button. Now, I wonder though.
Wait, is that the unprecedented thing about Donald Trump? The button? Is that what you're going with?
Listen, they used to put telephones in the West Wing that would enable you to talk to the Kremlin. Giving him a button that gives him a Diet Coke is actually a step in the right direction because they didn't want direct calls from Putin. Right? Like that's a ingenious move. Sir, there is no red button to launch the nuclear weapons, but here's a red button. You can get a Diet Coke. That's ingenious. And whoever came up with it is my new hero.
So two thoughts for you here. One of them is a correction. It was never actually a red telephone. It was a telegraph machine because diplomats don't talk by, unwritten communications like that in times of tension. It's just too risky. So, that's the
really,
petted part.
That's
important.
Yeah.
Let's get that on the record.
What's the second thing?
The second one is you've now fueled a theory of mine that Donald Trump actually thought that this red button launched nuclear weapons, and the Coke was almost like just go in there and try to calm him down with a busy soft drink. Yeah. He's trying to launch nukes again.
Step one of the de-escalation strategy. I don't mind it. Carter, can we also talk about that? The button didn't actually have a ramp or a railing that delivered a Diet Coke to you from some refrigerator. It actually was a red button that alerted someone to walk in to hand you a Diet Coke. The technological innovation that you are talking about, I think needs a further re-examination.
You know what? You just bring me down, Velji. You just bring me down. I bring some insight. I bring some intelligence to the pod, and this is what happens. This is the shit I put up with.
Speaking of bringing down, I'm going to move it to our next headline because while Donald Trump might be gone, others are still working on his behalf. Also from Fox News, day after inauguration, Hannity announces that big guest is Hunter Biden's laptop repairman. Guys,
no,
it is continuing.
Really?
Yes, this is indeed true.
God.
Sean Hannity is continuing the fight. The laptop remains unexamined. And what is a life if things remain unexamined? Corey, this is work that needs to be done on behalf of the American people.
Well, I just really look forward to this very interesting. Like, what are you gonna have a guy come on and he's gonna be like, well, first I tried to defrag the hard drive, and then I found a bunch of pornography and Chinese secrets. Like, what is this gonna look like? Like, I think exposure of this guy to the real world is probably quite dangerous to this conspiracy theory. So Hannity's walking a line, right? Like you start to give folks like this too much daylight, and you're going to kind of see what this really is. It's not a person. It's a stack of tires and a 5-year-old playing in it. So, got to be careful.
Carter.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the Fox News empire has been built on, presenting an argument that's not necessarily true. And of course, we'd all hope that they would have gotten to the edge and looked over the edge and found in themselves the will to carry on without carrying these falsehoods. But obviously, you don't walk away. You walk away from that type of an interview. I mean, it's going to be great TV. We were on TV yesterday. It was great TV. This is going to be great TV too. Sean Hannity should be very proud of himself.
I'm moving on to our next headline from NBC News. Non-political, because why not break it up a bit? 25-year-old professional video gamer is hanging up his controller and has announced his retirement due to a thumb injury. Oh. Now, Corey, you and I are both used to celebrities, athletes, I should say, pseudo-celebrities, hanging up their cleats, their skates, their shoes, their sneakers. But the controller has been hung for this 25-year-old e-gamer. I wanted to break up the political story for something that is actually much more somber, because America's healed, and now this is the type of things they have to worry about. So, any commentary?
I mean, pour one out for this guy. Listen, you joke, but these e-gamers can make millions of dollars these days. Millions and millions of dollars. This dude might be retiring at 25 and never working again in his life. Okay,
well, that's not the tone I was hoping for, Corey. You're just really just trying to... Carter, will you bring the heat against this 25-year-old?
I read the article, and I'm told it was a self-pleasuring incident, and I feel for him.
I don't even know if that's true. It could be. It's 2021.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Carter. Oh, Jesus Christ. Finally, a headline from the New York Times. Underdog podcast saves America from itself. Guys, I think that means us. Podcasts are what are saving America, and have now officially saved America. This is very exciting. Some people might think it is John Dickerson and crew. No, it is not. Some people might think it's those folks at Crooked Media. No, I think it's us that have saved America.
Yeah.
Carter, I want you to bring the heat on this one.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that Michael Barbaro is trying to get the heat off of him for the way he's behaved around this whole, situation with the Canadian ISIS or the Canadian ISIS terrorist and the podcast series that they did that turned out to be totally false. So what they've done is they've pointed congratulations at another podcast to elevate themselves, and that's us. We did it. We changed America, and I'm not surprised. I mean, I knew the three of us represented the view of the majority of Americans, and I'm just really pleased that we were able to do it.
Corey, any comments on podcast saving America?
Yeah, I mean, the New York Times usually gets stories about Canada wrong, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that they captured us so accurately and the role that we played in the U.S. election and saving American democracy. It was kind of nice. And you know what the coolest thing was, Zane? Like, I didn't even know they were writing it. It just showed up in my feed, and I thought, what's this? I'm going to read it. And it was like 12 pages, 3 of which were all praise about me, which was very pleasant to find this.
Zane and I each got 4.
Well, there was a lot more hedging around yours.
That's only 11 pages.
Yeah.
That's just to let you know. There's
intro pages too.
Come on, they got a segue.
This is true. There's just a page of segues that they included at the end.
Exactly.
That sounds like the New York Times. Just overcorrecting. That definitely sounds like that. Let's move it on to our first segment. You got your unity. Guys, Joe Biden's inauguration address, the inauguration ceremony in unprecedented times, a Capitol in Washington, D.C. that was more secure than ever before, a pandemic, which meant very few people, if any, observing this inaugural address. But Carter, I want to start with you, which is some baseline. Let's get into the politics. What was the goal for Joe Biden and team for this inaugural address? Let's start there. I want to get both of your sense of what the goal was, knowing we had a bit of this conversation last week, but since things evolved, since we heard more about impeachment, what Trump was doing on his final days, not attending, what was Joe Biden's singular, if not 1 and 1A goals for this inaugural address?
There were 2. And the first you alluded to, like the coming together, the bringing together of people. There was a total theme of coming together and being together as one nation, the United States of America, that we can bounce back from this situation. That coming together was one thing. And then the other thing was just a sheer understanding of what normal looked like, normal procedures, normal performances, normal people. Biden, I think, didn't shake the rooftops. I mean, he did not give a bombastic speech, trying to exhort Americans into a certain position. He gave a normal speech in a normal tone that gave us a normal feeling. And that was the overarching goal. I mean, I think that come together, and that's what's normal, are the 2 primary drivers of his initiative. And I was, pleasantly surprised to see how well it was delivered and how it made me feel.
Interesting. Okay, Corey, I want to get your goals before I get your assessment on what you thought about the effectiveness of the Biden inaugural address. But what were the goals in your mind?
Well, the goals were to set a tone and to lower temperatures. There's not too much I can add to what Carter said. I generally agree, but I think that when you look at the construct of the speech in particular, a big part of it was trying to get Americans to step back, to take a wide view and find what Carter called that normal, but also understand how abnormal perhaps or how below the American ideal some of the previous events have been. And he did this really interesting thing in the speech where he, inaugurals are famous for big, lofty ideas, like just the biggest of concepts. But what he did was he looked at the literal physical space around him, and he called out the activities that had occurred in it. So he talked about him taking the oath of office under a dome that was half finished, the same one Abraham Lincoln took a oath of office under. And, here on the Mall, the Mall where Martin Luther King Jr. gave the I Have a Dream speech, and on the steps of, the Capitol that was, raided just a couple of weeks before. And I thought it was a very effective way to do what we've been talking about here, which is to say, like, I've said a lot on this show. It's a frog in water, right? It's been boiling. You don't even realize how bad it's got. But I thought what he tried to do with that speech, and I think to relatively good effect, was to call out that this is not, what America's held itself to be, and not how America's acted in its finest moments. And in that sense, I think it was quite an exceptional speech. And I don't mean that in the greatest speech. I mean in a different speech. It was the exception. It wasn't the everyday inaugural. And because of that, I think we might remember it for some time, though there's always a recency bias with those things.
I want to get to the word you just mentioned, Corey, effectiveness. Carter, in the effectiveness of the goals, which I feel like you guys have harmonized into being relatively similar around unity and cooling temperatures, so to speak. How effective was it for you, Carter?
For me, unbelievably effective. For me, it was fantastic. I felt comfort. I felt peace. I felt confidence. I felt inspired. Pieces of it were so dramatic for me that they spoke to me, whether it was Lady Gaga singing the national anthem, which how many times have we seen the national anthem? And invariably it's that stylized American, version of the Star Spangled Banner that kind of makes you want to kill yourself because it goes for 30, 35 minutes. But I was really inspired by it. Kamala Harris, I was inspired by her. And Amanda Gorman. I mean, everybody's been talking about Amanda Gorman, the poet laureate, the young poet laureate who brought a poem that was inspirational and just kind of made me feel things that, normally when I'm seeing these things of late, of the last 4 years, I'm feeling something completely different. I'm feeling anxious, and I felt all these different emotions. I saw that on Twitter. So how did I feel? I felt great, and I hope that you ask me at some point, how did America feel? Because I think that might be a different answer.
Oh, I'm getting to that in a second. I appreciate you jumping on that. But Corey, Carter brought up something really interesting, which is I asked him about the Biden speech's effectiveness, and the answer he gave me was the
about
effectiveness
other people.
of the roster. And I'm kind of wanting to get your take on that, is that, usually we don't consume these things as a roster, especially if they're evergreen. But I'm curious for you, did you feel the same, that the lineup, almost like a comedy lineup, that you almost have your closer that kind of contours the rest of the lineup? Did you consume it in the same way, or were you looking at the effectiveness on Biden and Biden alone?
Well, you said usually we don't consume these things as a roster. Let's be clear. Usually we don't consume these things. Mm-hmm. If we tune into the inaugural at all, it's probably just for the speech, not for the entire day of pageantry, because that is boring AF, right? But there was just such a moment, and I think a lot of it was almost rubbernecking. What's going to happen? How is this all going to turn out? Are there other events that are going to occur concurrently? So let's watch CNN just in case a state house has a bomb go off. Sorry, but that's sort of what it, was kind of the macabre attitude that a lot of us carried through the day. And so, this is where we have to be really careful about recency bias. There's a lot of great singers and talent, and, rock and roll legend Chris Gaines sang Amazing Grace. But he also sang it at Obama's inauguration. So even when people point to things like that and say, look at the bringing together. Well, those things happen every time, I guess is my point. But, they are provided such an import by the moment. And what would perhaps, imagine this exact same roster and this exact same setup in 2012. I don't think you'd feel the same way. I'm not sure Carter would feel the same lift. So it's as much about the roster meeting the moment. But, was it an effective speech? I think so. I think you always have to curve these things based on political opponents are going to not love them. There'll always be sort of a begrudging acceptance. But, Joe Biden was quite conciliatory. His actions that followed and all the executive orders were perhaps less conciliatory, but that was a speech that was really about America coming together and working together. And if you watched it as a a more attainable Republican voter, then I think it probably hit its mark. But realistically, it won't hit the mark for everybody.
Carter, let's go to your question here, which is what did America feel like? The audience here was, there's clearly a group of Democrats and those in the country that wanted what I've previously called like their blood pressure medication, right? Oh my goodness, it's back to institutionalism, as ironic as that might be, right? It's back to how it used to be. Thank goodness, the respect for tradition, like, arguably the least progressive thing in many ways. So there's a group of people that wanted that warm milk, so to speak. But for the group that Biden was trying to communicate, this unity, take a step back, let's calm ourselves, how do you think that translated for that group? Do you feel like that came across with the intent that it was directed with?
Well, I think that the people for whom it was the Democrats, the Democratic Party, we received, and us as Canadians, maybe the world in general, as we were watching, we received it really well. But I mean, obviously, we joked earlier about how Q supporters found it. I'm struggling to find out how the Republicans found it. That group of 75 million Americans who chose to vote for Donald Trump in this environment. How did they respond? Because there's not 75 million Q supporters, right? There's a great number of Americans. And when I consume my media, when I consume my social media, when I consumed, I'd seen those angry people before, but I haven't seen them this week. I haven't seen them really since January the 6th.
Do you think that was deliberate? Like, do you feel like the GOP literally said, we are taking our foot off the gas and not interrupting this whatsoever? Do you feel like that was coincidental in your mind?
Well, I think that it's one thing for McConnell to say, well, we're going to take our foot off the gas, but I don't think that the GOP or the people who are voting for Trump are particularly susceptible to listening to McConnell. Right? The leadership speaks, ergo we shall listen. I wonder how they're feeling, and I don't know that we're going to know. I don't know that what I heard with this messaging around coming together, and Amanda Gorman and Biden and Harris, if they heard that the same way we did, because I'm not sure that they're hearing the same words, and I wonder what's going to come in the future here. If we're going to see, are people just tuning back into Hannity and signing right back up for it? I mean, Fox News's ratings were down considerably. Maybe now they start pumping back up. I don't know. I'm really interested to see though, because I didn't see them at all for the last 6 days.
You've brought up a lot of interesting points here, Carter, especially around, what I want to discuss later on, so I'll just tease it for you guys right now, is can you run on a unity banner while trying to have arguably some of the most progressive policies in your first 100 days be passed through? What does that look like? Because we almost use unity as a shorthand for compromise in some ways. Come together, right? Find common ground. And so, do you want to jump in on that, Carter? You're putting your hand up, so jump in and then I'll go to Corey. Sorry, Corey.
Well, part of me is thinking, let's not forget how Donald Trump ran 4 years ago. He was running on a totally different platform. The tax cuts weren't a part of his lexicon prior to running in 2016. He was a populist, not just for the Republicans. Of course, he was for the Republicans, but there were an awful lot of people who saw the selection, of Hillary Clinton and moved to Donald Trump that would have been or should have been on the progressive side. So, the progressive movement, Donald Trump embodied a different type of progressivism and prior to 2016, prior really to the tax cuts and getting into power and being co-opted by the Republican Party to provide them with tax cuts and judges. Donald Trump didn't go in with a strong ideology because he would have done a whole bunch of different things to protect the people that he said he was going to actually protect.
Right. Corey, original question to you was around the one I asked Carter around the effectiveness for the American people that needed to hear this unity message. Do you feel like it may have delivered for those folks with what Biden said?
Well, we talk about unity, and I think we sort of simplify it. Like you said, we do think about it as compromise. We think about it as come together. Mm-hmm. I think he was looking for kind of a higher, more conceptual unity, right? And he spoke to that in his speech, this notion that at the end of the day, you can still disagree. But what we need to unify behind is the system, and that we work through the democratic process to resolve our differences and not step outside of the system. And I think that's the unity he's shooting for here. It's going to be rough and tumble for the next bit, particularly in the Senate as it works through rules and all of that. Did Americans hear that message about unity, about that broader unity, about the system, about the need to return to the norms? Well, he did everything he could on that front. Not everyone will have watched. Not everyone will have wanted to hear. I would just encourage anybody who, like me, kind of loathe Donald Trump, just think if you were on the exact flip side and you feel that way about Joe Biden, would you even watch the speech? How would you have reacted to it? There's that old adage, if you don't like somebody, the way they hold their fork will irritate you to death. If you do, they can drop a plate of food in your lap and you're not even going to care. So there's a lot of people out there who are just not primed to hear that message. And Joe Biden, frankly, is probably not the messenger they need to hear it from. But that speech may have been heard by some of the people who will in turn carry that water to the people that need to hear it. You know, there were a lot. I mean, think about the Republicans that were in the audience there. Think about Mitch McConnell. Think about, I don't know, think about that jackass Josh Hawley, right? Now, he's not going to be one of those people, but there are people on the Republican side who are going to say, yeah, I can get behind that notion of unity and I can use those words. And it's a little too soon to say if it's effective with them because it's a second order thing. If it's effective with Republicans, it will be effective with their leaders first, who will in turn take that message to the grassroots.
Carter, let's talk about GOP strategy for a second. Do you feel like they did the right thing here? Get out of the way. We talked about what they could have been, but do you feel like not interrupting this flow, not necessarily coming out with like a outright retort? I'm not saying they're allowing a honeymoon period, because we'll talk about that in a second in terms of what they're doing from a policy agenda. But do you feel like as it relates to the ramp up to the inauguration, seems almost silly to ask, but given the unprecedented times, do you feel like them taking their foot off the gas was the right approach?
I think they had no choice. They had to take their foot off the gas. Otherwise, they would have been accused of continuing to inflame the situation. So they did the bare minimum. They took their foot off the gas, and now they're trying to figure out how to return to it. I think the challenge for them is not the Democratic Party. The challenge for them is this idea of a Trump-like new party called the Patriot Party, right? The party that Trump himself is musing about. So, you know, I don't want to be in the Republican Party as they're trying to figure out how to stop the far right from continuing to be a thing. Because once they stoked it for their own purpose, and they've already gone through this dance once before. Oh man, why am I forgetting the caucus name? Corey will rest.
Tea Party?
The Tea Party caucus.
Yeah.
That was devastating enough. Now, you know, you're going to see that, the right wing continue to move further to the right and perhaps develop themselves into something, more formal that could come. And by standing down over the last few days, they may be allowing that to stand up.
Go ahead, Corey.
Well, there's a much clearer kind of political comp, even though it's a lot older than the Tea Party. I mean, when Teddy Roosevelt lost the nomination for the Republican Party, he created the Progressive Party, and he ran as a presidential candidate. They ran, I think they got something like 9 seats. I'm ballparking there. This has happened before in the United States. This has happened before with defeated candidates. And I'm sure they fear it deeply. I'm sure if you went back and you looked at some of the stuff that was written back in the early 20th century, there was probably a lot of gnashing of teeth too. It really kind of disrupted the party system. America is interesting in the way it approaches political parties. They are so much more bottom up than they are in a lot of other countries. And so that must scare their leaders to death.
Oh yeah.
Because that mob looks cray. Right? We've talked about the QAnon stuff, but it's a pitchfork carrying crowd right now. And so they may decide nobody moves, nobody gets hurt is the order of the day right now.
We're gonna talk about the Patriot Party stuff in a second here in our next segment. But Carter, let's finish off this segment on Biden's inaugural with what would you have wanted to do differently, or what did you see that you felt like could have used some tweaks or changes or some more strategy associated with it. And I'm talking everything from the speech to how it was delivered and the tone to the roster of people that you saw it with to anything you would have changed from the visuals. Was there anything? I know it delivered for you, but if I'm asking you to put your strategist hat on, your communications hat on, what was something or a series of things that you would have perhaps tweaked, and if so, why?
I'll be honest, I don't have a list of things that I wanted to change. I mean, what would have been fascinating? I mean, his own list of pardons, like doing something different, like releasing a bunch of,
Wait, what? Okay.
Joe Exotic.
No, not Joe Exotic at all. None of the people involved.
I'm sorry,
in the
your
campaign.
man Donald let you out to dry.
No,
I want you to walk this
black Americans that have been imprisoned for marijuana crimes, black Americans that have been unfairly imprisoned for crack cocaine issues instead of white powdered cocaine issues, which clearly the Trump family's been doing. But like those types of things, like something that made a statement about an agenda that goes further than a bunch of executive orders. We've just gone through 30 days, 40, 50 days of Trump showing us the absolute power of the pardon process. And wouldn't it have been something if 25 people had been pardoned by, or maybe the same number of people that Trump pardoned? You picked those people who were unfairly imprisoned in the system, in the federal penal system because of racial bias, and you sent a signal. I could wrap my head around that really strongly because that's a foundational problem, and it would have had people talking about issues instead of talking about your executive orders.
I like that you started with, I have nothing really to add. It was pitch perfect. Then your idea was to add a bunch of parts.
No, if I'm going to add something, I'm going to add something fucking big because everything else everything else was fine.
I don't love it, but I appreciate the gusto. Let me put that there. Corey, you can respond to that, but also answer the question for me from either tone, visuals, staging, content, what you would have changed and or added.
It's such a dumb idea. Listen,
you just don't give a shit about racial injustice. No, that's fine. If you don't care about racial injustice, that's fine. I understand.
Day one of a presidency is not for a bunch of pardons. Day one is for criminal justice reform. You want to do something like that? You want to deal with like the systematic challenges within the system? You don't just pardon a bunch of people. That's kind of like this legislative, executive tokenism. Use your 100 days to your advantage and push something hard. The other thing I will say on that is one of the reasons that Donald Trump has been rightly maligned for his pardons in the past bit is that there's been a certain lack of process to them, a certain almost lawlessness to the way he has approached processes around pardons. So Joe Biden doesn't want to go and say like, oh, I'm just going to pick a bunch of pardons I want to do. No, he's going to say we're going to restore the system. We're going to restore the system through which we do pardons, and we're going to make them less political. If you want to create a contrast with Donald Trump, you don't go tit for tat. You talk about an entirely different way to play the game.
You know what I have to say? I love these fireworks. These were the type of fireworks I was expecting that we could collectively target towards the 25-year-old gamer with a sore thumb. But we have to save it for that. Okay, Corey, same question for you, though, that I asked Carter. Anything you would have done differently? Anything you would have liked to see? The roster, the tone, the message, any of that stuff?
No, I don't know. I don't care. I wish these things were shorter always. I'm not as sentimental as you two.
Taking the Bernie Sanders approach, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to sit there with my Canadian MyPillow, which we call Mon Laurier for our American listeners, and just go to bed. Like it was nice, but it was not how I wanted to spend my day.
Okay, we'll move it on to our next segment. Our next segment, you got your challenges. I want to break this up into two. I want to talk about the challenges that the Democrats have / Biden and the Republicans have with Trump. And let's start with Biden because we're on it already. And I teased this point earlier, which was this concept of unity. What is maybe I'll start here. We always say, Corey, I'll start with you, that hope is not a strategy. I'm going to ask you another simple question. is unity a strategy? Is unity a political strategy? Because yes, I understand what you were saying regarding Biden asking for some of the most fundamental elements of unity, like let's respect democracy, some 101 stuff. But as it relates to the message and the brand he's putting out there for the first 100 days, can unity be a political strategy? And take that wherever you will.
Yeah, maybe, I guess is my answer. Because, let's get into some sort of like the theory of engagement for a second, because I'm sure that'll be just delightful listening.
That's good. I'll bring it back to the 25-year-old gamer if we need to, but go ahead.
Well, let's put it this way. When you think about the notion of like engaging people and building things, if you're building an engagement and you know that you're not going to cede power on certain things, right? Then you move one step back and you say, okay, can we agree to a process through which we will make this decision? Right. And what Joe Biden's doing is, rather than offering co-creation, this idea that he's going to share power with the Republicans, what he's saying is, can we agree to a process? And, we will follow the rules. You follow the rules. You have your levels of authority. This is why I think he's a bit squeamish about taking out the filibuster. He wants to get kind of a consensus on the rules, because from there, whatever he does will have a veneer of legitimacy. And so unity can be a strategy in that sense. By rooting everybody in the democratic norms of the United States of America, by trying to pull back to that and giving the Republicans less to complain about on the rule front, you take a lot of the venom out of the critiques of the actual things that come out of the process. Because you can just say, like, listen, we all agreed to deal with how would he describe it? The guardrails of our democracy. And so as long as he keeps those intact and he gets a sort of an agreement on that with the Republicans, that can be a strategy. That can be a way he devenoms the American system, in a way that he can start pushing some things that are perhaps, yes, he's got the votes to do it, but does he have the moral authority to do it? Does he have kind of the will to push that through, a very diverse United States with governors who are from, different, political stripe and what have you?
Carter, can unity be a political strategy in your mind?
Fuck that. Push it through.
This is just retaliation.
You want to talk about moral authority? You just went 4 years with Donald Trump and you want to go talk about fucking moral authority? You're going to have a limited amount of time where the Democratic Party stays together. Take advantage of it and ram the shit down people's throats.
And
you need
and
to
a limited
ram
amount
down
of time.
Throats. That's what you do now. Period.
In fact, as we laugh, Carter's point was going to be my next question to throw to you guys, because this seems to be the outright tension. The focus on the rules. I'm powering through the throat stuff. By the way, that will not be the title of this episode. It will not be called "Empowering." It will not be called "Empowering Through the Throat Stuff." Carter's point was what I wanted to bring up to you, Corey, which is that there is this coalition within the Democratic movement right now that says, screw the rules. We now need to focus on this limited window where we have the Senate, where we have the House, where we have the presidency to pass legislation that we need to. Is the rules-based compromise, let's focus on process, burning time where you should actually be just ramming stuff through?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of evidence that is the case, Zain. Just look at Barack Obama when he had a supermajority for a good chunk of it in the Senate and was able to actually even get past the filibuster. How little he managed to get done. When you think about just the amount of authority he had relative to the legislation that came through because of the horse trading that went on with the Republicans, that ultimately led to a compromise that it has not died a death, but Obamacare is not even what it was before the Trump era. But, what Joe Biden's doing here is deeply idealistic. Is it ultimately going to be defeated? Yeah, if the Republicans aren't interested in playing that game, then I think you need to you need to drive your authority the way you can within the boundaries of the rules. What needs to happen now, and what I suspect the Democrats are thinking about in the Biden camp, is what does that ladder of escalation look like here? So offer this olive branch, because it's almost like game theory. This is kind of net better for all of us if we can get back to these democratic norms. But if you don't play ball, rather than that being net benefit for you, how do we rapidly pivot and run through a legislative agenda? Now the challenge they have is around setting the rules of the Senate, right? There's only so many times that opportunity comes forward. If I was Biden and I was looking at the rules of the Senate, rather than having those rules set at the start of each session, I would be changing the rules to allow the rules to be changed more regularly and effectively say, you guys can have the filibuster for now, but if you abuse it, if you don't play ball, we'll fucking get rid of it like that, you know? And insofar as I'm willing to play with the rules of the game, it would be within reason, because obviously you can kind of blow off your own legs and not be following the strategy of let's all work together. But, you know, it's maybe every 6 months we're going to revisit this filibuster rule. Let's try to work together. Let's save it if we can. But if you guys aren't going to be abusing it, then you bet there's going to be a giant Biden administration agenda reinforced by the progressive wing of the Democratic Party coming right at you.
Carter, you're in the same room as Corey in the Biden administration. He just made the point that he just did right now around the time and the investment necessary on rules. Are you buying it, or are you trying to sell the president on, fuck this, let's just ram through the things that we need?
I just started a stopwatch because that's how much, because we have to keep track of how little time we have to be effective before the entire mechanism of the American Congress returns to, I got to get myself reelected land, and they stop being an effective force for good and they start becoming an effective force for themselves. So you have very limited time in the American Congress. You must push things through. And listening to Corey's, discussion, talking points, I broke it into a rash. I was so taken by his, righteousness that I have to apply lotions now to try and not, I'm all grossed out. Here's the thing. Biden has talked about reconciliation. Biden did the speech of the norms, and Biden did all the work. I don't think it needs to continue into the legislation and into the processes. I think that what needs to happen in the processes is you got to get people on side and you got to get things done. That's where America is. And we just learned from 8 years of Obama that reaching across the aisle results in you getting your hands slapped. And then we saw how Trump operated. What happened with the reaching across the aisle for the Trump period, Corey? I mean, I don't seem to recall that. And I don't like the fact that already there's a conversation about Joe Biden's Peloton and how, that's not going to be secure and that's not projecting the image that he wants to project. Fuck you, media. Fuck you, Republicans. We're going to do what we fucking came here to do, and we're going to get shit done because Joe Biden ain't going to live forever. There, I've said it. I'm done.
Right, yeah, get shit done and ride Peloton. That's the Joe Biden dream. Look, I think that's fine. That's certainly a worldview, Carter. I'm not sure it's Joe Biden's worldview, and I think he's going to be more interested in moving forward and trying to find that unity. So put your big boy pants on here and say, I work for Joe Biden. I think that this way leads to ruin. What do you do? How do you try to support your guy in getting done what he wants to get done, but have those protections in place that if it starts to go bad, you haven't destroyed your first term?
This is good. Corey's taking over the hosting responsibilities. Carter, Corey's question to you. I'm just trying to add value.
Your point about having the Senate only have like one set of rules for this session is exactly right. Like just end the session, right? Start a new session and have bring in a new set of rules. If it doesn't work, and then you hold that over top of McConnell. I think that there's going to be more cooperation. I seem to recall a strategist episode recently where you smacked me up the head for suggesting that they could try and reach across and get 1 or 2 extra votes so that they're not relying on Kamala Harris to break the tie all the time. But whatever, fucking Corey, jump wherever you need to jump, depending on the podcast. I don't give a shit. But, this is still, I would give them very little rope. I give them very little trust because they haven't earned a damn thing.
Carter, I want to close out the Biden and Democrat discussion with the broader of the two questions that I had, which is, what is their biggest challenge right now? And perhaps let me lay out a few, right? They've obviously got the policy challenge of passing this nearly $2 trillion stimulus package. So that's a legislative challenge, maybe not a policy challenge, but a policy element to it, because quite a few progressively inclined policies in there, including increasing the minimum wage, alongside the rent relief, and the $2,000 stimulus checks. Is it that? Is it keeping the left flank of the party together so they don't start bickering? Is it the Republicans and trying to unify in a common place of them? Is it just a laundry list of things to undo? Like, from your perspective right now, give me the triage. What is the triage for you that you're trying to handle some of these big concerns?
I'm an old-fashioned guy, Zane, and I think that when you're facing an economic downturn that is, unrivaled in the midst of a pandemic that we haven't seen since 1917, I'm going to call those your two biggest challenges. So I think that those are the big things that you need to get through. And the problem is you don't necessarily have a recipe for getting through both of them. Sure, you're going to get your inoculation program going. You're going to start seeing vaccinations significantly step up under Biden. You're going to, hopefully get people to wear masks and start to see a downturn. But keep in mind, for the next 2 months, deaths are probably going to go up. That's the lagging indicator. You're not going to see significant shifts. So Biden's going to be immediately stuck with this, you're underperforming the pandemic compared to Trump, even though he's still dealing with the Trump fallout. So I think, and then comes the economy, because the economy doesn't just bounce back because you ask it to. So hopefully it does. Hopefully it's got enough juice left in it that things pop back up and we don't see the other side of the coin, which is hyperinflation, which we haven't seen for decades. But it's a real thing when you start to produce the amount of money in the economy that these bills are pushing out there. So I'm worried about all kinds of things, but most of them center around the economy and the pandemic. And I think that that's probably the two things the Biden administration's worried about.
Carter, I appreciate that answer. The other elements, of course, the pandemic overarching all of this, hence the $2 trillion stimulus package. And also, of course, this impeachment trial of an unknown date, which is going to take the Senate's capacity, at least a bit of that capacity over that period of time. Carter, before I go to you, Corey, Carter, follow up for you. You mentioned vaccination program. The political messaging decision by the Biden incoming Biden administration to say 100 million doses in 100 days, smart or perhaps risky to actually quantify your vaccination plan from a political strategy perspective? What do you think?
Well, I think from a political strategy perspective, if he's got confidence that he can do it, then saying it and exceeding it is fantastic. As soon as you can exceed a goal like that seems so significant, that no one believes you can do it, then you're golden. So I love it, but I like it mostly from like also the point of view that if you don't write down the goal, you're never going to achieve it. So big goals are a good thing, but I hope he didn't hang himself. I hope that, he's not going to be, because we always remember these things wrong, right? Recessions that were caused by one government are saddled on the next. Obama had to deal with the recession that came from W. Bush, right? And that wasn't his doing, but he was still saddled with it, and he still had to pay the political price for it. I'm hoping that Biden doesn't have to do that.
Corey, I'm going to ask you the original question I did to Carter in a second, but Carter's brought up something interesting that I want to talk about, which is the Biden administration, even with their first press briefing, has said they're going to commit to increased and enhanced transparency on the COVID numbers. Do you feel like there's a political risk there for them between kind of opening the proverbial sort of kimono on the data, even if it isn't going well, versus kind of packaging it and messaging it in iterative, statements and providing a bit of contouring and spin around it? I'm going to start with that question, then I'll go back to the original one around the biggest issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely risk there, and I can think of all of one government that has not come in and claimed there's going to be greater transparency and better sharing. That government was the Donald Trump government, where the first press conference was berating the press for not saying that it was the largest inauguration ever. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I do.
But generally speaking, governments come in with very high-minded concepts of transparency and sharing. And you know what? That's because you have this luxury of absolutes in a campaign world and when you're drafting a political strategy. But things get very gray very quickly. And even if you set aside kind of the self-interest of saying, okay, we want to have, we don't want to take a political hit. Like, let's just say they don't worry about that ever. Well, what if all of a sudden you're in a room and somebody says, listen, we have these statistics. But if you share them, I think it's a good thing. But I want you to know Joe over here thinks it will cause panic in Philadelphia, and there will be a run on that, and people could get killed. What do you do? Well, you've committed to transparency, but maybe you agree with Joe there, right? And so these issues become a lot fuzzier on the inside, and you've got HR issues, and you've got the considerations about how people react and whether that reaction itself is a worse ill. And all of a sudden, you know, what you can very easily dismiss on the campaign trail is kind of like weak-willed academic thinking about these things becomes real in a fucking hurry. And it's, you know, vaccines will be an interesting one because it is life or death. It happens in war all of the time. It happens in healthcare. It happens in children's services. You name the issue and you have these considerations. And so often they are, you're being asked to choose between two wrong things or two good things, right? You know, protecting people's privacy is good. Transparency is good. Which do you pick today? Right?
Yeah.
Killing people in a war is wrong. Having people killed at home is wrong. Which do you choose today? And that is the burden of a president. That's the burden of any major leader. And so I will be curious to see how long this stance of transparency holds and how much there's chumminess between the press secretary and the press come August. Because things are going to get real in a hurry. 100 million is a big goal for 100 years based on the current pace of things. I suspect, like Carter said, he probably believes he can do it, or else he wouldn't have said it. Maybe he believes it's a reach goal. But, you know, there's going to be problems. There's going to be things along the way. There's going to be decisions that maybe that doesn't need to cloud the message right now, because that will get in the way of our big public health campaign. And then the media are going to get pissed and the relationship's going to change a bit. And it's going to change a bit more and a bit more. And that is the way of the world, which is part of why it's so good to change governments every now and then.
Corey, original question to you. Biggest problem or biggest hurdle facing the Biden administration right now? What do you think it is?
I think it's expectations that America's been saved. I think that there are still all of the same problems that are there. But for, you know, the fact that Donald Trump essentially helped stage an insurrection, I think we would be having a very different conversation today. We'd be talking about Donald Trump's counter rally at the inauguration. We'd be talking about the launch of Trump Media, perhaps, his crazy tweet that finally got him kicked off Twitter at 12:05 p.m. on Inauguration Day. But in many ways, America, as horrible as the events of January 6th were, America dodged a bullet because they could have been so much worse. And we can't kid ourselves. The conditions that led to that moment, the conditions that led to the rise of Donald Trump himself are still there and still need to be addressed. And the fact that Joe Biden is there and Kamala Harris is there and the Democrats control the House and the Senate is going to exacerbate the problem with certain populations that feel they will never get back into the majority.
Carter, and let's move it on to the GOP here. Corey, that was an excellent summary from your perspective. What's their biggest issue? Is it the Patriot Party? Is it when to pipe up on? Is it, you know, trying to ensure that you break up the solidarity of those, you know, 51 votes, so to speak, in the Senate? What do you feel like their greatest challenge right now? Is it outliers like Josh Hawley? Like, what do you feel like their focal point should be if you were giving them advice right now?
I think the biggest issue is Trump. I mean, that will manifest itself in a number of different ways. It manifests itself in Hawley. It manifests itself in the divide between the Republicans and the potential of a Patriot Party. It manifests itself within the right-wing media sphere, where you're going to see Newsmax try and outperform OANN or OAN or whatever the hell it's called, and outperforming Fox News. All of those things are going to be still held together by the gravitational pull of the enormous orange man called Trump, and he's the genie in the bottle that they have to try and figure out how to get it back in to the bottle. Otherwise, they are going to be potentially facing significant challenges in 2022 and 2024.
Corey, what's the biggest challenge for the GOP right now in your mind?
That they are in the middle of a civil war where they didn't even realize they were in until shit got real. They thought they were in control of some of these forces. They are not in control of some of these forces. They've always given them anxiety, but I think just now the penny has dropped for many people this month. And it may result in a cleaving of the party. It may not. It may result in one of the factions getting on top of the other. It may not. But what the GOP looks like 12 months from now is a very uncertain picture. And as long as you are so consumed with that internal thing, it's going to be very difficult to compete with the Democrats. And you know what? Good. And I don't mean that in like a champion of the Democratic agenda, but if you don't know what you're actually fighting for because you're fighting it out internally, you probably shouldn't actually be that competitive because Americans won't know what they're buying. And that's a very dangerous situation.
We'll leave that segment there and move it on to our next segment, or our final segment, I should say, our overrated, our underrated. Stephen Carter, are you ready?
I am so overrated.
Yeah, okay, well, correct. The only accurate real-time prediction by Stephen Carter. Note it, everyone. Stephen, I'm going to start with you. We've talked a lot about it. It was the buzzword of the inaugural address by Joe Biden. But unity as a political strategy, overrated or underrated?
Overrated. I mean, politics is partisan. Politics is about fucking over your buddy. And that's what we need to get back to, is the Democrats winning instead of the Republicans. Overrated. Overrated.
Once again, Carter champions himself as overrated. Corey, overrated or underrated unity as a political strategy?
I'm going to say it's underrated. I understand what Carter's saying, and one of my big frustrations of the Obama year was or his first year, was how much he continued to try to work with people who had no interest in working with him. But these things are investments that pay dividends over time. It doesn't mean that Joe Biden needs to be a fool, but I think that his instinct, that his first attempt should be to try to find some sort of consensus to mend America. And then if that fails, quickly pivot to, getting things done is the right one. It's hard to imagine how America pulls itself out of the social tailspin it's in unless somebody decides that unity is an important political strategy.
Corey, speaking of unity, I'm going to stick with you on this. Past presidents Bush, Clinton, and Obama filmed a video talking about the need to heal as a country, the need to unite, almost echoing and adding an underline to Joe Biden's inaugural address. So I guess the question I have for you, Corey, is the influence of past presidents. Overrated or underrated?
I think it's overrated. I don't know that that people listen to the past presidents as much as we think they do. I mean, just even think about where George W. Bush was in this last election. It's not as though he endorsed Trump, and it's not as though Republicans cared. So, I think it's kind of like flipping through TV channels and seeing an old sitcom that you're like, oh yeah, I used to love MASH, right? MASH was great. They're not making new episodes, and it's not going to change your opinion about MASH no matter how much you watch it.
Carter, same question to you. For past presidents, their influence, most specifically, overrated or underrated?
I think it's underrated. I mean, now's the time for a unity message, and having them all together really
That's
brought...
good. Thank you for your intellectual consistency on this podcast, and your answers without any agenda of retribution or revenge is something that we really enjoy on the show. I'm just going to interrupt you there and ask you the next question, Stephen Carter. Presidential pardons. Donald Trump issued a ton of them. We discussed, obviously, the one that did not go to Joe Exotic. Of course, Steve Bannon being part of the mix. Lil Wayne, of course, why not? Also getting a presidential pardon. But as they stand, overrated or underrated?
They're overrated.
Presidential pardons.
Presidential pardons should rarely, if ever, be used. I find them, you really don't want to see president having to. What you need is a reform of the justice system. And if you can get yourself a reform of the justice system, then I think you're really cooking with fire.
That's good. Thank you, Corey. Presidential pardons, overrated or underrated?
They're underrated. I mean, this is something you can actually do as president rather than fucking about trying to reform the justice system.
You guys are such dicks. Corey, I'm going to stick with you. We discussed the Patriot Party, a potential party that Donald Trump wants to start. Now, depending on his impeachment trial, he may not ever be able to run for president ever again. But a third party on the national scene, overrated or underrated?
Overrated. The way the American political system works, there's really more than two parties already. There are progressive wings of the Democrats. There are Tea Party / now QAnon wings of the Republican Party. And they rationalize it differently than we do in Canada and they do in a lot of other Western democracies, where you create a political party and you push an agenda. In the United States, you fight it out for control of a political party that can't really, there's no gatekeeping there. They don't get to decide if you're a Democrat or not, right? And this is so extreme that you had an independent in Bernie Sanders run for the leadership of the Democratic Party. And I think that the notion that a third party is going to fundamentally shake things up, it suggests that there's only two parties. And I don't, there may be only two things labeled as parties, but there are so many factions in U.S. politics. And really, I think ultimately a patriot party, so-called, it'll just result in things like fusion tickets, where those are allowed, where you can run under two parties. And it'll mean, like in certain places where the Republicans always win, maybe it'll be Republican or Patriot, but there'll be kind of a self-rationalization in line with kind of the American approach to democracy.
Carter, third parties, especially on the U.S. Federal side, what do you think? Overrated, underrated?
It seems like Corey was too young to remember a guy named Ross Perot, who ran as a third-party candidate and gifted the presidency to a guy named Bill Clinton. So third parties make a significant impact. They are underrated, and Corey's lack of understanding of American politics continues to astound me, because historically third parties have mattered and they will continue to matter. Teddy Roosevelt, Ross Perot, there's a long history of it, Corey. We'll get you up to speed eventually.
Maybe a history of spoilers, Carter, but even there, the polling's a little unclear on whether that actually made a difference in who the Reform Party pulled from. And it wasn't even the Reform Party in 92. The Reform Party was 96, which you would know if you had a deeper understanding of American politics.
I'm just going to go back and look for the Whigs and the...
Okay, well, speaking of unity, here we go. I'm trying to put a question out there that there should be some unity on. Stephen Carter, I'm sticking with you on this. Diet Coke, overrated or underrated?
It is completely overrated. It's disgusting. No one should ever drink it.
Corey, Diet Coke, overrated or underrated?
I hate it so much, but my wife loves it, so I feel like if I go as far as Carter, I'm going to end up divorced.
Well, if one way to prevent that is install a button at home. Just a button where she could just order Diet Coke.
Stephen
thinks it's a technological miracle. Yeah,
I love that.
Stephen thinks it's a technological miracle that a Diet Coke just appears. Corey, final question. Podcasts that save America. Overrated or underrated?
Well, if we're talking about Pod Save America, overrated. But if we're talking about the podcast that saved America, you, the people,
correct.
Deeply underrated. It was one of those things that was always there for you, like your My Pillow, always supporting your head, filling you with what you needed to get through the day. And frankly, I don't know how you're all going to survive without us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Carter.
This is underrated. It changed American politics. It made a significant difference, and it shall be remembered in history, almost with the same level as the attack on Pearl Harbor. It's amazing how much we've been able to achieve.
I'm actually surprised we didn't get a Presidential Medal of Freedom with Jim Jordan.
It's not over yet, my friend. It's not over yet.
Day one, Presidential Medal of Freedoms. That's what Carter's strategy for the inauguration is. Just parade.
Bring them in, baby. Bring them in.
Presidential Medal.
MSNBC, everybody gets one. There you go.
We are going to leave it there. That is You the People for this week. Make sure you don't subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you when you need us next. We can't hear Stephen. He is speaking. So keep talking, Stephen. I keep mouthing it. I'll try to mouth it for you. Absolutely overrated. I mean, I can't imagine anyone. He's now writing. Okay.
Yeah, he's writing.
Yeah.
No, he's just drawing lewd photos, everybody.
This is good. Excellent.
Oh, no. Come on.
Carter, Jesus Christ.
Margaret Thatcher? No.
Doing that?